Good morning. Today's Sunday. I'm a little bit tired because I haven't been sleeping very well the past few days. I guess it might be in part because I'm overexposed to altcoins in crypto. Um, I had a plan set up to gradually reduce my exposure, but when things are moving up very fast, you always think you'll hold out a little bit longer. And then I had started making arrangements such as buying the property here in Production City. The idea was to, in part, make sure that I do take profits, but I was leaving the funds there to take advantage of the last few days, even though according to my rules I should have already sold a portion of it. And then it took a major dump, and some coins are down 25%, 50%, and of course then it's even harder to sell. So I guess I made the resolution now to stick to my plan for the rest of the cycle, because it's a lot easier to hold something like Bitcoin, where it's very likely to follow the power law to go back up the next cycle. But from previous cycles I've learned that there's plenty of tokens, like a lot of altcoins do not survive the bear market, and there might be a bear market around the corner. It might start anywhere at any time. Most likely 2025, maybe. The good times could last to 2026, who knows, when Trump comes into office. A lot of things are changing. Politics is going to be a lot more crypto friendly, because the vice president, for instance, he's a holder of certain cryptocurrencies. President-elect Trump even started or at least one crypto project himself, and I believe he holds Ethereum. So, it's looking positive in that sense. And there's also the FTX distribution that's going to happen, most likely either by the end of the year or early next year. So I'm very tempted to hang on until that liquidity injection of, it's about $16 billion, if I'm not mistaken, that'll be distributed to people that held accounts at FTX. So they're likely to reinvest that into crypto, considering most influencers currently, the ones that I follow, seem to think that there's still a long way to go. If Bitcoin repeats, or the crypto market as a whole repeats previous patterns, then more likely than not, we still have about 12 months to go. You can look at that. There's charts that'll show you the current market overlaid with the previous one, and it's looking very positive. However, it's hard not to take into account that there's people shouting from the rooftops, although their deadlines sometimes have been postponed and postponed again. They still make very convincing arguments sometimes, like Henrik Seberg, that it could start as soon as late this year, but more likely late January. Like, he seems to think there's still a big pump ahead, although he's predicting it might all go into the crapper at 100 and what did he say, around 120,000, whereas the more optimistic people are predicting a cycle top of 180 to 50. I think the ones calling for any higher are being too overly optimistic. I wouldn't want to take the risk of being any level of standard deviation above what is the fair valuation of Bitcoin, especially when it comes to altcoins. Currently we're slightly above, it seems, but it depends also what chart you look at. I've seen a few different ones. Perhaps it depends on exact calculations. But apparently in January next year, the fair price will have risen to about 100,000. So in that sense, we are currently below. It's a hard call to make. I think that the fact that I am having a hard time swallowing 20% drops may mean I'm overexposed, but then again, it would suck, right, to sell right after a big dump and then see everything skyrocket. So maybe I should just sit on my hands and hope for the best. Another interesting prospect on the horizon is the rumor that the UAE has been not just mining Bitcoin, but potentially also accumulating it. I believe the Mr. 100 identity is still unknown at this time, but it might be a government entity. So that is also something that could really have a big impact this cycle if the game theory plays out, where states, several states like Texas, but even countries are proposing bills and warming up to the idea of having a Bitcoin strategic reserve. And if that starts happening, you know, it's game theory on, right? Whoever does it the first would likely be the winner. Another promising factor is that Michael Saylor keeps on buying Bitcoin for his company MicroStrategy. I believe he still has a couple billion to go. There's a rumor of either him or another large player buying Bitcoin over the weekend. So I'll probably hold on till at least next week to see what I'll do. There's more likely than not going to be a strong bounce. And then I might opt to shuffle some funds into Bitcoin just to sleep well. You know, that's always what I preach, is that if you lose sleep over your portfolio, then you're probably invested too heavily in risk. So my idea is to risk off a little bit, you know, as things get more volatile. It's tempting when you see these huge gains in a single day, say 20% up in a day. That's normally something that takes at least a year or two in the stock market, but welcome to the modern times, the crypto markets. So it's tempting to try and take advantage of these, of course, but it's hard to compete with people that have dedicated bots, dedicated computers, you know, advanced algorithms, dedicate their entire lives, and they have teams of people much smarter than I am to try and extract money from retail, from regular people. So with Bitcoin, you know, perhaps the best strategy that I would recommend for people that aren't really into the crypto sphere on a daily basis, I would say just buy and hold for the long term. I should correct what I said earlier. It seems that the plan for FTX is approved on to be executed as of January 3rd, but the actual payouts are not expected to start until 60 days later. So it'd be until March or so if there's no further delays. It happens sometimes that with these, you know, large, how do you say, legal issues, that things tend to get pushed back quite a lot. Just look at Mt. Gox. There's a lot of voices saying that the alt season is gearing up, and although there's been this heavy dip, a lot of people are expecting Solana, for instance, to hit perhaps at least 500, possibly 800 or $1,000 before the bull market is over. So if you can handle the risk, I'm not against allocating at least a certain percentage of, I currently have about 30%. That might be a little bit heavy, but I'm also not too much in favor of changing these ratios too much as the bull market progresses, because one is tempted to trade too much. So yeah, Solana is one of the the assets that looks most interesting in terms of adoption and usage. Although I saw a recent video as well, which is entitled "Is Solana a Scam?" I'll try to link in the description, and you may want to have a look at that. It talks about the average transactions, for instance, per user being about 200 per day, which obviously means that there's a lot of bots active on the network now. That doesn't necessarily mean that all of Solana is a scam. If there's like a few malicious actors or a lot of pump and dump meme tokens being launched, of course, if there's an opportunity to make money, there's going to be people that take that opportunity. But that's not to say that Solana isn't a lot faster and simpler than Ethereum, for instance. If you look at Polkadot, that was like a complicated, quite a complicated affair. So Solana, by not having all the necessity for layer 2s, is a lot simpler. The clock-based system makes it a lot faster, although Edward Snowden has expressed concerns recently about Solana being too centralized, that it relies too much on elements that could be attacked, and that for that reason Ethereum might in the long run be a better choice. He also argues that there's a lot of VC money involved in Solana, and anytime a project is primarily launched for monetary gains, whereas Ethereum, you know, it seems at least Vitalik Buterin, I don't know if I pronounce it correctly, had ambitions to just create something that promotes, that has a lot of functionality that could make the world a better place. Like his primary motivation, although I'm sure it helps to some extent, his primary motivation doesn't seem to be greed, at the very least. So yeah, who's to tell? If you are comfortable taking on a bit more risk, I would say Solana is a decent bet. I'm also a fan of the channel Invest Answers, and he's very enthusiastic about the potential of Solana, and he's been, you know, on the money so far. So I wish I would have listened to him earlier. But yeah, it's all up to you, know, like what is your risk tolerance? How much do you allocate to crypto overall, and then how much of that would you allocate to individual or specific altcoins? To me, generally, I would try to stay at least 50% into Bitcoin. There's another channel that I recommend, Fred Krueger. He talks about the power law and makes a very compelling case. And he's not as of a maximalist as, say, Michael Saylor, but he does recommend keeping 90% of your allocation in Bitcoin. And he's a lot smarter than I am, so I realize I'm taking on some risk by sometimes going as low as, say, 30% on Bitcoin when there is a good indication that alt season is on the horizon. But it can bite you in the ass, so make sure to imagine that you actually take a 30% dip or a 50% dip before you can even get out of such a position. So imagine that half of the money that you have invested in altcoins disappears overnight. Like, how would you actually feel? How would you actually react? Would you be able to hold on, and do you trust enough in these assets? Do you know enough about them to wither a bear market, to withstand the bear market? With Bitcoin, I would be confident enough in the power law and the history of it. Of course, if you have this fart coin or cock in you or some random dog token with or without a hat, that's not something that I would have high hopes for when it comes to the cycle ending and a new one starting. That it's still going to be a valuable asset. Just look at, I mean, there's always the possibility that they last. Look at Dogecoin, but I think it's more the exception than the rule, and you could still lose like 90%. So make sure to keep that in mind and speculate wisely, or at least make sure to have some kind of exit plan or a strategy in case things go south. That would be my 2 cents. What I might recommend if you're going to speculate on a highly volatile altcoin, in order to reduce your downside risk somewhat, you could use a Pionex DCA bot. You can use any trading bot, but they make it, theirs is free. You almost require like a monthly subscription and an API access. So with theirs, it's all integrated into a single platform and it's free to use. And it works quite well. I haven't had any issues with it. So I do believe they probably have some kind of sign-up bonus. So if you want to try them out, rather than signing up directly, you could use the link in the description, and it should have, I don't know what the benefit will be at the time of when you watch this video, assuming anyone even watches these. But yeah, it should be better than a straight sign-up. So check that out in case you're interested. And that's about it for today. So subscribe if you're interested for this type of content, and whoever's here, thank you for watching.